Welcome back. And in this lesson, we're going to be adding 360 rotations to our designs. That way, if you want to export out a animation or video of your file kind of rotating, and then you can upload it to your website or socials. So let's go ahead and get started. So first we're going to do is add a new thing we haven't talked about, and that's called an empty. So do Shift A and go down to about halfway. You'll see this little crosshair with empty. And we're just going to do plain axis. And you can't really see it, but it has shown up in our flexible design here. And let me hide this Suzanne here so you can maybe see it. Maybe hit period on our numpad. And it's actually showed up way over here on the side. That's because that's where our 3D cursor was. So let's just hit Alt-G, and that will bring it back to the center. So there we go. Now our empty is right here in the center. If I bring in my gizmo, you can kind of see an empty is just kind of what it sounds like. It's just an empty object, but we're going to use it as a controller device to spin our designs. And real quick, I'm going to reset my 3D cursor, just Shift S, cursor to world origin. That way everything's just right there on the 0, and turn our design back on. So what we can do now is let's rename our empty. Instead of calling it empty, let's call it 360 controller, because that's what it's going to do. And now let's put our design, any design that you brought in, mine's the Suzanne here, we're going to parent it to the controller. So I'll just click and drag, hold Shift, and drop it inside of that. And you can do this for all your different designs. And now let's do some spinning. So make sure you have the 360 controller, and I'll say that again just so you don't accidentally mess up. Make sure you have the empty or the 360 controller selected, and then hit N to bring up our information panel. And on the item tab, we want to set the Z rotation. We're going to add a keyframe. So let's bring up our timeline here at the bottom and watch what happens right down here in the bottom left. If we right click on the Z and say insert keyframes, we get some green action going right here. And we've also got a little diamond right here, and that is our keyframe. So that's how you know you've set your first keyframe to 0. And then we want to, let's say we want this animation or this rotation to last 5 seconds. We can tell Blender how many frames we want in our animation. And if there's 24 frames in a second, we can just type in 24 frames times 5 seconds right here in this side, hit enter, and then Blender will do the math. So that's 120 frames. Thanks, Blender. And then all you have to do is click up here in the top gray spot where all these little numbers are, and just scroll to the very end. And we don't want it to be on 120, our last frame here. We want it to be 1 frame more. So 121. And then we can set our rotation to 360 degrees. And it looks like nothing's happened, but really it's just made a whole full rotation and landed right back where it is. And then we'll right click and say insert single keyframe, the second one right here. And then watch what happens in our timeline down there. Bloop. And now we've got 2 keyframes. So if you hit spacebar or hit play right here, hey, looky there. We've got our first animation. So that's one way to make a super simple 360 spin. But notice when it's spinning, it kind of goes and then it slows down and it stops and then it starts again. But I think it looks cooler when it just continually rotates like a product display. So let's do that. And to do that, let's just pause it for just a second. And if you hover your mouse over the timeline here, make sure you have everything selected. So hit A, and you should have both of these keyframes kind of lit up. And then hit T. While hovering over your timeline, just hit T. And we want to change these keyframes. Right now it's Bezier, which means it's just kind of curvy, but we want it to be linear, like a straight line. So just click linear. And then now if you hit play, it's just going to continuously play like, a nonstop loop. And I use this all the time, like on my Instagram videos or, product shots on the website. I just have it like slowly rotating. So if we hit 0 on our keyboard, on our numpad, then now we're inside of our shot here. And we've got a nice rotating product shot. Pretty cool. All right, so now we're ready to export out a video of this. So to export out a video, animation, go to this little tab right below our render tab. It's our output properties right here. And you can change the size of your window frame here. So say if you wanted to do something for like YouTube or just your normal video size here, we can do 1920 by 1080. That's, 16 by 9, kind of normal resolution there. But say if you wanted to do like a square, like for Instagram or something, you could do 1080 by 1080, and watch what happens to this little rectangle here. Bloop. Now if we zoom out a little bit, it's a perfect square, so that's a 1-to-1 ratio. And then say if you wanted to do like portrait style, you could do 1080 by 1920. And then that's more like, the long kind of vertical phone view. So you've got all different types of choices there. I'm just going to leave it at 1920 by 1080. And then the only thing you have to do is go to your output, and it may be twiddled up here, but just hit output and tell Blender where you want this animation to go. So click on the little folder, and I've just got a renders folder, so I'll just double click that. And we can call this Suzanne 360. I've already got one exported, but we'll just override that. So just name it anything you want. And now we need to tell Blender what kind of format we want to render our 360 animation in. And real quick, up here above, up here at the top where it says frame start and end, you want to make sure that's 1 and 120. You don't want it to be like 1 and 5, or that's only going to export out those 5 frames. So make sure you have all your frames. And for the file format, you could do an image sequence. It's a little trickier, but the easiest way to do a video is just go to the right where it says movie, and you can pick any one of those 3. AVI, JPEG is totally fine. And then for the quality, you can do, crank it up to 100%, because why not? And then now we are ready to export. So again, make sure your CR10 volume has these 2 screen and render guys turned off. That way we don't get the bounding box for our CR10 volume in our final render. So just make sure those 2 are turned off. And now what you can do is go up to render, and we're going to do the second option, which is render animation. So just go ahead and click that, or you can do Control F12 for animation and watch what happens. There we go. So now you can see in the top left, it's counting our frames, our estimated time. And if you zoom out right there, you can kind of just sit and watch it go to town. And it shouldn't take too long because we're using Eevee. So maybe a couple minutes and you'll have your render. And I'm just going to speed this up just so you don't have to sit and watch the paint dry. All right, and there we go. So now we're done rendering. You can see we hit frame 120. And let's go ahead and close that. And we can go into our renders folder. And there we go, Suzanne 360. Hey, we've got a nice, awesome 360 render that's just going to spin continuously for all eternity. And also, just so you know, this is just the Eevee renders. If you need higher quality renders, you can switch your render engine from Eevee to Cycles. And you can already see like a lot more is going on. We've got all these dots here, but that's going to take a lot longer, but it's going to give you way higher looking image in the long run and better shadows and everything. So, it's going to really increase your render time. But, if you need something to look super duper awesome, you could always switch to Cycles and render it out, when you're going to bed or something. And then when you wake up, you'll have a freshly exported render. So I'm just going to switch back to Eevee. And now the very final thing to remember is to save. And that way in the future, you can always come back and just really quickly, bring in a new design. So you could do flexible design, do file, import, grab an STL, and then maybe pick another one of your designs. I'll just do the box animal. We'll bring in our little elephant here. And there he is. We'll just bring him on up, maybe scale him down a little bit, maybe even a little bit more. Hit G and Z. And we can turn off our Suzanne here. And make sure you hit all 3 of these because we don't want her to show up in any other renders. And then just reposition our little elephant here, right there maybe. And we'll do Shift tilde, get a better shot, and then just parent him to the 360 controller. Hit space. Hey, there we go. Now we've got a cool 360 already going. We can add some colors, maybe a new color. Maybe we'll make him like a gray color. We can make him darker gray. And then maybe we want to go to our background layer and change that color to like yellow or something. And looky there, we've already got a new color. Or you can just, play with different colors and see what you like. Maybe we put them on red. Red's actually pretty cool. And there you go. You can just, make a new export and render out another super cool design. Maybe turn off some of your lights, make it a little more dramatic. Maybe there's no lights. Maybe it's a top light, side light. So really it's just up to you, how you want it to look. But it's pretty fun and just kind of gets you kind of very first taste of animation inside of Blender. And we could even add, some reflection on the background or, make it reflective a little bit. Bring the roughness down. Looky there. Now we've got a little bit of a little sheen and shine on the floor there. We can go like super duper shiny. Turn our overlays off. We've got a, like a glass marble floor of this elephant rotating around. So really just, be as creative or as silly as you want and see what you can create. It's just for fun,